The night I turned 21, the girl I had loved since middle school left my birthday cake melting under a broken rooftop heater. 3 hours later, I found another girl standing outside the railing of the old ferry terminal, staring down at black water as if the river had personally invited her. That was how I met Sable Ardent, although at the time I knew her only as a drenched stranger wearing one expensive shoe. Rain had polished the entire pier into a mirror. I was walking home with a crushed cake box under one arm and a bouquet that looked as disappointed as I felt. The terminal had been closed for renovations, so when I saw a silhouette beyond the safety barrier, my first thought was that the universe had hired an overly dramatic actor to make my birthday feel less embarrassing. Then the silhouette shifted forward. I dropped the flowers. "Excuse me," I called, keeping my voice steady. "Before you do anything permanent, I need your opinion on a serious legal question." The girl turned her head by barely an inch. Wet black hair hid most of her face. "Go away." "I would, but you're standing above a restricted shipping lane. If you jump, the harbor authority will blame the night guard. His name is Mr. Pritchard. He has twin daughters and a terrible back. I don't think he deserves the paperwork." There was no Mr. Pritchard. I had invented him because telling someone to calm down is useless when their pain is louder than you are. Give the mind a smaller problem, though, and sometimes it pauses. She glanced toward the empty guard booth. "There is no guard. He's doing his rounds. The booth has dust on the chair. Mr. Pritchard is extremely committed to standing." Her shoulders trembled. It might have been the cold. It might have been the beginning of an unwilling laugh. Either one bought me another second. I slowly set the cake on the pavement and took out my phone. I had already triggered the emergency shortcut inside my pocket. My roommate, Owen, was receiving my live location, and the emergency dispatcher could hear every word. "You're lying," she said. "Completely. But you checked the booth, which means part of you is still paying attention. Can you tell me your name?" "No." "Fair. Mine is Caleb Mercer. Today is my birthday. My shoes are full of rain, and I have just been publicly rejected in front of 19 people. I am currently accepting donations of basic human cooperation." That finally made her look at me. Her face was pale, striking, and exhausted. She looked familiar in the way famous people sometimes do, but my brain was too busy measuring the distance between us to search its memory. "You think your bad birthday matters to me?" "Not at all. I'm using it to establish that I am already having a terrible evening. If you make me climb over that railing, I'll probably tear my only decent coat." "Then don't climb." I have poor impulse control around disasters. I moved one step closer. She noticed immediately. "Stop." I stopped. "All right. You control the distance. But let me put my coat on the ground between us. If you come back over, you can stand on it. The metal must be freezing." Her bare foot curled against the rail. The missing shoe lay in the water far below, circling in an oily patch of light. "Why do you care?" she whispered. That question carried more weight than the rain. I could have given her a speech about hope. I could have promised tomorrow would be better, even though I knew nothing about her tomorrow. Instead, I told her the only honest thing I had. "Because I'm here." Her expression cracked. For one breath, she was no longer an untouchable beauty on the edge of the world. She was simply a young woman who had been waiting for somebody to say that her life was worth interrupting their evening. She shifted one leg toward the safe side. The rusted rail gave a sharp metallic shriek. Her hand slipped. I ran. My knee hit the barrier hard enough to explode with pain, but I caught her wrist with both hands. Her body swung over the water. She did not scream. Somehow that silence scared me more than anything. "Hold me," I grunted. "Let go." "Absolutely not." "You'll fall too." "Then move your other hand, because I refuse to become a tragic local headline on my birthday." Her free hand rose slowly. She grabbed my sleeve. I hauled backward until a second pair of arms joined mine. The real security guard, alerted by the dispatcher, had sprinted from the construction trailer. Together we dragged her onto the pavement. The girl landed on top of me. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Rain struck the concrete around our heads. My hands shook so badly, I had to press them against the ground. She stared at me with furious, glassy eyes. "I told you to leave," and I demonstrated my listening problem. The guard wrapped an emergency blanket around her. Paramedics arrived soon afterward. She refused to give them a surname and panicked when one of them mentioned the police. Her pulse was dangerously fast, but she had no serious physical injury. I stayed several steps away while a crisis responder spoke with her. 40 minutes later, the responder pulled me aside. She won't go to the hospital unless someone she trusts accompanies her. I looked over my shoulder. The stranger sat inside the ambulance with the foil blanket drawn to her chin. Trust seemed like a generous word for what existed between us. She doesn't know me. Right now, she says you're the only person she will speak to. So my 21st birthday continued in a psychiatric assessment room with fluorescent lights, vending machine coffee, and a ruined cake slowly leaking frosting onto my coat. The staff determined that she could leave after a safety plan was made, provided she was not alone and returned for a follow-up appointment in the morning. She refused every relative listed on the form. When they suggested a shelter, terror flashed across her face. I gave her 3 choices. I could call a hotel and wait in the lobby until her room was secured. I could contact a women's crisis center, or she could use the spare room in my apartment while I slept in the living room. After I sent my location and her description to Owen, she studied me as if I were a contract containing hidden fees. Why would you tell your friend about me? Because sensible people create accountability when a vulnerable stranger stays in their home. You say strange things. I study risk management. That was not exactly true. I studied information systems and worked weekends coaching children at a community gym. But I had recently learned that sounding confident could move a conversation forward. She chose the apartment. It occupied the 2nd floor above an old bakery, 15 minutes from campus. The place was small, warm, and permanently scented with cinnamon from the ovens below. I unlocked the door, switched on every light, and placed my keys on the table where she could see them. The front lock opens from inside without a key. The bathroom is there. The spare room is at the end of the hall. My roommate is away visiting his grandmother, but he knows you're here. You can call him, the hospital, or emergency services from this phone. I slid an old tablet across the counter. The girl examined the room. Her gaze stopped on a framed photograph of Owen and me wearing ridiculous silver capes at a charity basketball game. Are you in a cult? Worse. Owen is a fan of Captain Meteor. Who? A television hero who defeats aliens by shouting about friendship. Owen believes he is based on a true story. She looked at the photograph again. Your friend is not intelligent. He studies mechanical engineering. Those facts can coexist. It was the first deliberate joke she made. I pretended not to notice how relieved it made me. I found a sealed toothbrush, clean sweatpants, and an oversized university hoodie. I placed them outside the bathroom instead of handing them to her. Take as long as you need. When you're dry, we handle the next dangerous activity. Her eyes narrowed. What activity? Eating soup. That is not dangerous. You haven't tried my cooking. The bathroom door shut. A lock clicked twice. While the shower ran, I threw away the drowned bouquet and rescued what remained of the cake. The words, "Happy Birthday, Caleb," had fused into "Happy Bird." I considered it an improvement. I made roasted pepper soup from a jar, grilled 2 cheese sandwiches, and put the sharp knives inside a locked drawer. Then I called the hospital to confirm the morning appointment. I also texted Owen a carefully edited summary. He responded in 4 seconds. You found a mysterious woman on a stormy pier? Yes. Is this an origin story? No. Captain Meteor found his wife during a typhoon. Go to sleep, Owen. He sent 17 star emojis and a warning that he would call every hour. Despite his nonsense, I knew he meant it. The stranger remained in the bathroom for almost half an hour. When she emerged, my hoodie swallowed her hands and reached halfway down her thighs. Her wet hair hung over one shoulder. She stared at the front door, then at the soup, then back at the front door. I recognized a negotiation occurring entirely inside her head. You can leave whenever you want, I said, but at least take the sandwich. If I eat, I'm not agreeing to stay. Understood. And if I stay for 10 minutes, I'm not agreeing to sleep here. Also understood. And if I sleep here, it does not mean I trust you. You negotiate like a hostage lawyer. She sat down. I have met many hostage lawyers. I laughed because I assumed she was continuing the joke. She did not laugh. The first spoonful of soup stopped her completely. Her eyes lowered to the bowl. She swallowed with visible effort, then took another spoonful, slower this time. Too spicy? I asked. No. Too salty? No. Then why do you look offended? My mother used to roast peppers before blending them. Most people skip that step. There was our first real clue. Used to. I did not ask how her mother died. The hospital counselor had warned me not to interrogate her. We ate in silence, while the bakery mixers rumbled below us like distant thunder. After finishing everything, she looked at the empty bowl with an expression that suggested she had been betrayed by her own appetite. "You can ask now," she said. "Ask what?" "Why I was there." "You can tell me when you want to. I don't need the story as payment for dinner." She stared hard enough to make me check whether soup had landed on my face. People always want something. I want 8 hours of sleep and a refund for my birthday deposit. Neither problem is yours. Her gaze shifted to the collapsed cake box. "Someone abandoned you. They missed a party. You bought flowers." The florist was persuasive. "Your name was written on the cake." Very observant. "You are protecting someone who hurt you." That sentence found a bruise I had been pretending not to feel. Nadia Bellamy and I had grown up on the same street. I had carried her school bag when she broke her wrist, tutored her through math, repaired her laptop at midnight, and spent 5 years mistaking her comfort with my devotion for love. She knew I planned to confess on my birthday. She even promised she would come. At 6 that evening, Camden Rook invited her and her roommates to the opening of an exclusive lounge. Nadia decided the connections might help her social media internship. She did not tell me until after my guests had arrived. At 9, someone posted a video of her laughing during a party game while Camden fastened his watch around her wrist as a dare. Her message to me arrived at 9:15. "Don't be dramatic. We can celebrate another day. You know how important networking is for me." At 10, she added, "If you leave before I arrive, I'll be seriously disappointed in you." I waited another hour. Sable listened without interrupting. I still did not know her name, so in my head she remained the Storm Girl. "She did not abandon you by accident," she said. "She compared 2 opportunities and chose the richer one." The precision of it stung. "Probably." "Then why are you defending her?" "Because I trained myself to do that long before tonight." She lowered her eyes. "That is pathetic. I nearly tore my shoulder pulling you over a railing, and you're insulting me in my own kitchen." Both things can be true. I should have been annoyed. Instead, a laugh escaped me. She looked startled, then the corner of her mouth moved. At midnight, I showed her the spare room. The sheets were clean, the window locked, and a wooden chair could be wedged under the handle if that made her feel safer. I took the couch, with an alarm set for her hospital appointment. "Caleb?" she said from the hallway. It was the first time she had used my name. "Yes?" "My name is Sable." "Good night, Sable." She closed the door without giving me a surname. Sleep refused to cooperate. Every time rain struck the window, my body remembered the rail giving way. I checked the hall twice, not entering the room, only looking for the strip of light beneath the door. It stayed on until nearly 3. At 3:20, the apartment alarm began shrieking. I launched off the couch and collided with the coffee table. Smoke filled the hallway. I grabbed the extinguisher, kicked open the kitchen door, and found Sable standing in front of the toaster with a butter knife in one hand and a flaming piece of bread in the other. "Put that down!" "I was hungry." "So you declared war on breakfast?" "Your toaster trapped it." "Because you pushed the bread in with a metal knife." The fire surrendered after one blast of foam. The smoke alarm continued screaming until I removed the battery. Sable stared at the white disaster covering the counter. "I had the situation under control." "The ceiling disagrees. Your equipment is poorly designed. You tried to duel electricity with cutlery." She placed the knife down with royal dignity. "I see that criticism is your love language." At 3 in the morning, my love language is silence. I made oatmeal while she sat at the counter pretending not to be embarrassed. When the bowl was ready, she inspected it suspiciously. "You should not be this calm." I coach 9-year-olds. Last week, a child put a basketball through a window and blamed gravity. Gravity was involved. You would get along with him. Her laugh came out before she could stop it. The sound was small and rusty, as if it had not been used in months. After eating, she hesitated beside the couch. "The room is too quiet," she admitted. "I can leave the television on." "The television is in here." I understood. Nightmares had driven her from the spare room, but pride would not let her ask for company. I moved to the armchair and gave her the couch. We watched an old wildlife documentary at low volume. Sable made it through 7 minutes of penguins before falling asleep with the blanket pulled to her nose. I woke at dawn with my neck twisted against the chair and a heavy weight across my knees. Sable had migrated in her sleep. Somehow she had crossed the space between us, curled on the carpet, and wrapped both arms around my lower leg like I was emergency furniture. One of her hands clutched the hem of my sweatpants with alarming strength. I considered taking a photograph for evidence, then remembered I wanted to continue living. I tried to free my leg. Her grip tightened. "Don't go," she whispered. The words were so frightened that I stopped moving. Her eyes remained closed. A tear tracked down her cheek. Whatever dream she was trapped inside, she was not the cold woman from the kitchen anymore. I stayed still until sunlight reached the carpet. When she woke, she looked at my face, then at her arms, then at my trapped leg. She released me so quickly that her head struck the coffee table. "Nothing happened," I said. "You saw nothing. I currently cannot feel my foot. That is unrelated. You used my leg as a flotation device. I said it is unrelated." She disappeared into the bathroom. The lock clicked. A moment later, the shower started, possibly to cover the sound of her groaning and humiliation. I checked my phone. Nadia had sent 14 messages. The first blamed me for leaving. The next 3 explained that Camden's invitation had been impossible to refuse. Then came a photograph of a wrapped gift, followed by a warning that if I continued ignoring her, I would lose breakfast delivery privileges for a week. That one made me stare at the screen. For years, I brought food to her dorm before class. Nadia had converted my affection into a subscription service, and somehow she believed suspending the service was a punishment for me. Her final message read, "Meet me before lecture and apologize for embarrassing me. This is your chance to fix things." 24 hours earlier, those words would have thrown me into panic. I would have written a page explaining myself, then bought her favorite coffee as interest on a debt I did not owe. Now all I could see was the empty rooftop, 19 pitying faces, and a girl on a railing asking why anybody should care. I typed one answer. "You chose the lounge knowing what last night meant to me. That was your right. Ending this pattern is mine. I won't bring meals, complete errands, or wait for permission to be respected anymore. We can be civil at family events, but our private relationship ends here." I read it twice. It contained no insult and no invitation to debate. Then I sent it, muted the conversation, and placed the phone face down. My hands trembled afterward. Boundaries sound powerful in motivational speeches. In real life, the first one often feels like cutting off a piece of yourself. Sable emerged wearing the same university hoodie, her damp hair tied with a rubber band she had found near the sink. "You look ill," she said. "I resigned from a 5-year unpaid position." "The girl?" I nodded. "Good. You don't know either of us. I know enough to recognize exploitation." The certainty in her voice suggested experience. Before I could answer, somebody knocked 3 times on the front door, paused, then knocked twice more. Sable went white. She moved with shocking speed, pulling me away from the entrance and flattening us both against the wall. Her hand searched the waistband of her borrowed sweatpants for a weapon that was no longer there. "Who knows you're here?" I whispered. "No one should." The coded knock repeated. "Miss Ardent," a man called from the hall. "It is Gideon. I came alone." Ardent. My brain finally connected the familiar face, the controlled voice, and the terror of police involvement. Sable Ardent was the only daughter of Cassian Ardent, chairman of Ardent Maritime, owner of half the waterfront, and alleged head of the oldest criminal network in the region. Business magazines called her a billionaire heiress. Gossip sites called her the Glass Princess, because no reporter had ever seen her smile. I looked at the woman wearing my hoodie. She quietly picked up the heavy ceramic fruit bowl. "Please tell me you are not planning to murder a billionaire bodyguard with decorative pottery. It is stoneware." That correction does not comfort me. The man outside spoke again. "Your father does not know I found you. Your mother's people are still loyal." Sable's grip loosened. She opened the door with the chain attached. Gideon Shaw was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered, silver at the temples, and dressed like a man attending a board meeting where somebody might be thrown through a window. He looked at Sable, closed his eyes for one brief second, and exhaled. "You are alive." Against my better judgment, his gaze moved to me. Every warm human quality vanished from his face. "Who is he?" "The reason your search did not become a recovery operation," Sable said. Gideon's eyes returned to mine. Then I owe you more than I can express. His tone said he still intended to investigate my bloodline back to the invention of fire. Sable refused to return to the Ardent estate. Her mother, Marisol, had died 6 weeks earlier when her car went through a mountain guardrail. Police called it an accident. Cassian announced his engagement to Verena Locke, Ardent Maritime's legal director, 23 days later. When Sable confronted him, he froze her accounts, confiscated her phone, and ordered security to keep her inside the estate for her protection. The previous evening, she escaped through a greenhouse service tunnel. She had nowhere she believed was safe. Gideon listened without interrupting. "Your mother left instructions," he finally said. "If anything happened to her, you were to take control of the family trust on your 22nd birthday. That is in 11 weeks. Your father needs you to sign a proxy before then. Until you do, he cannot sell the Eastern Port Division." "The division Mom refused to let him audit privately," Sable said. Gideon nodded. For a moment, the tiny kitchen no longer smelled like cinnamon and burned toast. It felt like the center of a war. "Can she stay hidden here?" Gideon asked me. Sable answered first. "I am not hiding forever. 48 hours, he said. "Give me that long to arrange a secure residence and recover your university credentials. You can continue attending class under discreet protection." I stared at both of them. Why my apartment? Because nobody in our world would imagine Miss Ardent choosing a building with a laundromat that accepts coins, Gideon said. "The bakery is excellent." I noticed. He placed a black card on the table. "Expenses." I pushed it back. "I can afford soup and electricity for 2 days." "Mr. Mercer, that card has no practical limit." "Then it definitely does not belong next to my grocery coupons." Sable watched the exchange with an unreadable expression. Gideon left us an encrypted phone, 2 emergency contacts, and a small tracking button Sable immediately threatened to feed to him. They compromised by putting it inside her coat rather than on her body. Before leaving, he drew me into the hall. "You acted honorably last night," he said. "Do not confuse gratitude with permission to involve yourself in her family." "I have class in 40 minutes. Avoiding international shipping conspiracies was already on my schedule." His stern mouth almost moved. "Keep it there." When I returned, Sable stood at the window holding the encrypted phone. "You can go with him," I said, "or stay, your choice." "You are not afraid?" "I am extremely afraid. I'm simply trying not to make your decision about my fear." She turned toward me. The guarded expression she wore like armor softened by 1 degree. "I will stay for 48 hours. "Then we need rules." "You are giving me rules?" "No weapons on the dining table. No classified conversations while the bakery delivery driver is upstairs. No destroying kitchen appliances. And if you feel like returning to that pier, you wake me. Call the counselor, or contact Gideon before you move 1 step toward the door." Sable considered each condition with the seriousness of a treaty negotiation. "I accept, with 1 amendment." "Which is?" "The toaster provoked me." "Amendment denied." I left for campus after making Sable promise she would attend the hospital follow-up by secure video. Gideon had arranged it to keep her location private. She accepted the appointment, then rejected my suggestion that she rest. "I rested for 7 minutes during the documentary." "You slept for 3 hours." "That sounds medically excessive." "Normal people aim for 8. Normal people do not inherit shipping empires." I could not argue with that, because I had never inherited anything, except my father's tendency to sneeze in sunlight. The walk to Bellwether University took 20 minutes. By the time I reached the technology building, Nadia was waiting beside the entrance with 2 coffees. Her roommates, Bryn Cole and Lacey Wynn, stood behind her like attorneys prepared for a very shallow trial. Nadia stepped into my path. "Your message was cruel." She looked beautiful, tired, and genuinely upset. The old version of me would have surrendered before she finished the sentence. "It was direct," I said. "You ended years of friendship in a text." "I spent years explaining the problem in person. You called me insecure every time." Bryn scoffed. "The problem is that Nadia has a life outside you. She got a career opportunity and you punished her for it." I turned to Nadia. "Was the lounge a career event?" She folded her arms. "Camden introduced me to 2 agency directors. Before or after the drinking games?" Her cheeks colored. "That is none of your business." "Correct. What you do is no longer my business." That is exactly the boundary I set.
For a moment, she had no response.
Bryn tried another angle. At least take the coffee and stop making a scene. You stopped me outside my building. I moved around them. Nadia caught my sleeve. Caleb, wait. I admit I should have warned you sooner, but you knew Camden's invitation could help me. Why couldn't you support me for one night? I gently removed her hand. Support is not the same as accepting whatever is left after everyone else gets your best. You knew why the dinner mattered. You made your choice. I am not demanding you undo it, and I am not competing with Camden. I'm simply done volunteering for a role that hurts me. Her eyes filled with tears. Seeing them still hurt. Healing did not turn me into stone. It only stopped pain from making my decisions. So that's it? She asked. You'll throw me away because I missed one birthday? No, I am stepping away because one birthday finally made me count the other days. I entered the building before she could pull us into another circle. Owen waited in the back row of our database lecture, wearing a Captain Meteor t-shirt beneath his jacket. He inspected my wet coat, bruised knee, and sleep-deprived face. You look like the final survivor of a low-budget disaster film. Good morning to you, too. Is the mysterious pier woman safe? Yes. Is she secretly royalty? I froze while taking out my laptop. Owen's eyes widened. She is. You guessed that from nothing. Captain Meteor teaches us to trust instinct. If your instinct repeats this conversation, I will delete your game account. His expression became solemn. I have never met you. During the lecture, my phone buzzed with a photograph from Sable. She had arranged the breakfast ingredients into a neat row on the counter. Beneath it, she wrote, "Which container is coffee?" I zoomed in. One jar held coffee. The other held dark soil Owen used for his miniature cactus collection. The left one, I replied. Do not brew the right one. Why is there soil in the kitchen? Because Owen believes his cactus is a member of the family. Your household is unstable. 5 minutes later, another message arrived. The counselor says I need routines, food, sleep, and contact with safe people. I informed her I already ate oatmeal. That is one item, Sable. It is 25%. In business, that is meaningful progress. Despite myself, I smiled at the screen. Owen leaned over. That face is either romance or a discount code. Pay attention to the lecture. Captain Meteor met his wife. Finish that sentence and your cactus becomes salad. He faced forward immediately. After class, I met my project group at the library, covered my shift at the campus help desk, and canceled the dinner reservation that had survived from my failed birthday plans. The restaurant refunded only half the deposit. Strangely, I did not care. The money felt like tuition for a lesson I should have learned years ago. At the apartment, Sable had completed her appointment, reorganized my entire spice shelf by geographic origin, and taped a handwritten warning to the toaster. Hostile machine. Do not engage with metal. You own labels? I asked. They were in the desk. You searched my desk? Only the top drawer. The counselor suggested a grounding exercise. Organizing objects by category was one option. She looked ready to defend herself, so I checked the drawer. Nothing private had been disturbed. The arrangement is impressive, I admitted. But paprika and chili powder are not the same country. They are both red. That is not geography. It is efficient geography. Gideon had delivered a small suitcase of clothes and Sable's university identification. I picked up the card and stared. You attend Bellwether? Technically. You're in the graduate finance program. I finished my undergraduate degree early. You are 21. I dislike wasting time. You nearly made coffee from potting soil this morning. Academic intelligence and kitchen intelligence are unrelated markets. That explained why her face had looked familiar. Bellwether used her photograph in donor brochures, although Sable rarely appeared in public classes. Ardent Maritime had funded half the business school. She noticed the grocery bags in my hands. What are we eating? Fish tacos. Her face became suspicious. Does the fish arrive dead? That question worries me. The fish did not arrive dead. The bakery owner, Mrs. Dallow, had seen me carrying groceries and insisted I accept a live river carp her brother had brought from the countryside. She claimed fresh fish would restore my energy after my romantic catastrophe. The carp slapped the inside of its water bag all the way upstairs. Sable examined it on the counter. It is looking at me. Most animals do that with their eyes. It knows your plan. The plan is dinner. The carp struck the bag with its tail. Sable took one step back. It objects. Noted. I asked her to chop cabbage while I dealt with the fish. Then Gideon called to update her about security. By the time their tense conversation ended, the counter was empty. Where is the carp? I asked. Sable kept slicing cabbage into identical ribbons. It escaped custody. A splash came from the bathroom. I closed my eyes. You put dinner in the bathtub. I granted it temporary asylum. Why? It displayed a clear desire to live. I stared at her. She stared at the cutting board. This was not about a fish. I walked to the bathroom. The carp circled beneath a layer of bubbles left over from Sable's shower. It seemed healthier than I felt. We cannot keep a full-grown carp in the bathtub. Agreed. You will buy an aquarium. That is not where I expected the sentence to go. You saved one desperate creature yesterday. It would be inconsistent to execute another today. I also purchased tortillas. They can be filled with beans. The carp survived. Mrs. Dallow laughed until she had to sit down, then found us a large glass tank previously used for bakery decorations. Sable spent an unreasonable amount of money having Gideon deliver a proper filter. She named the fish Chairman because it had successfully overturned an executive decision. Chairman watched from the new tank while we cooked black beans and cabbage. Sable misread my handwritten recipe and added 2 tablespoons of salt instead of 2 teaspoons. The first bite dehydrated my entire family tree. She watched my expression carefully. Is it good? It has authority. That is not a flavor. My tongue has submitted its resignation. She sampled the beans, froze, and immediately drank half a pitcher of water. The recipe was ambiguous, she declared when she could speak again. The abbreviation said teaspoon. That could mean tremendous salt portion. We rinsed the beans, added tomatoes, and rescued dinner. Sable ate 3 tacos while pretending she was only evaluating quality. Afterward, she stood in front of Chairman's tank with her arms folded. You owe me your life, she informed the fish. Do something useful with it. Chairman opened and closed his mouth. He says the same to you, I said. Her eyes flicked toward me. For a second, I worried I had gone too far. Then she nodded. Fair. Gideon returned at 8 with worse news. Castian had reported Sable missing, but kept the report private, using family security instead of police. He had also scheduled an emergency board meeting for Friday. The agenda included a temporary proxy granting him control over Sable's trust votes because she was medically unfit. He turned the pier into leverage, Sable said. He cannot prove what happened there, Gideon replied. The hospital records are protected. Verena will find them. Sable paced to the window. Her movements were controlled, but her breathing changed. I recognized the beginning of panic from the terminal. What does the proxy allow him to do? I asked. Gideon hesitated before answering. Sell the Eastern Ports subsidiary to a private consortium. Who owns the consortium? Shell companies. We have been unable to identify the final buyer. Sable stopped pacing. My mother identified it. That was why she ordered an independent audit. Gideon removed a small steel case from his coat. Inside lay a silver cufflink shaped like a crescent moon. This was recovered from Marisol's safe deposit box. The bank was instructed to release it only to you. Sable touched it with one fingertip. This belonged to her first business suit. The cufflink was heavier than it looked. A seam ran around the edge. With a jeweler's screwdriver from Owen's toolkit, we opened it and found a memory card no larger than a fingernail. My promise to avoid shipping conspiracies lasted approximately 9 hours. The card held one encrypted archive and a text file containing a sequence of numbers. Gideon's technical team had tried standard passwords without success. Sable stared at the digits. They are not account numbers. Could they be dates? I asked. Some sections are too long. I copied the sequence onto paper and divided it in different ways. The numbers ranged from 1 to 92, with several repeats. They could have been page references, coordinates, or substitution values. Then I noticed Sable humming under her breath. What song is that? She stopped. Nothing. You started when you saw the cufflink. My mother used to play a music box shaped like a moon. How many notes? Her eyes sharpened. We found a recording of the melody in Sable's old cloud storage. The number sequence mapped to note positions and pauses. When converted, it produced a phrase Marisol had repeated whenever Sable panicked as a child. Count the lights that stay. That phrase unlocked the archive. Folders appeared, each labeled with a month. They contained port manifests, internal emails, insurance reports, and photographs of containers whose declared weights did not match their contents. The final folder held a voice recording. Sable clicked it. Her mother's voice filled our kitchen. "If you are hearing this, the official explanation for my death cannot be trusted. Cassian has reopened the routes I spent 10 years closing. Verena built the legal structure. I do not yet know every investor, but someone at Bellwether University is moving money through the Rook Foundation. Do not confront them alone. Take the evidence to Special Investigator Leona Cross. Gideon knows how to reach her." The recording ended with a long breath. Then Marisol spoke again, softer. "Sable, none of this is your fault. You are my daughter before you are my heir. Choose life, even if the company burns." Sable did not move. Gideon turned away, jaw clenched. I reached toward her, then stopped before touching. "Do you want us to leave?" She shook her head. "Do you want me to stay?" One small nod. I sat beside her without speaking. Several minutes passed. Finally, her hand moved across the table and gripped my sleeve. "She knew," Sable whispered. "She knew they might kill her, and she was still trying to protect me. She also left you a direction. Choose life." "Yes." Her fingers tightened. "I do not know how." "Neither do most people. We can start with tomorrow morning." She looked at Chairman drifting peacefully in his tank. "That is a very small plan." Small plans are harder for grief to sabotage. Gideon contacted Investigator Cross using a number known only to Marisol's private security circle. They arranged a meeting for the following night. Until then, the files would remain offline on 3 separate drives. I expected Gideon to remove Sable immediately. Instead, she refused every safe house he proposed. "Cassian owns the security companies. Verena knows the hotels. Nobody monitors Caleb's building." "That was true before I arrived twice," Gideon said. "Then stop arriving in a black armored sedan." He looked personally wounded by the criticism of his vehicle. They compromised again. 2 plainclothes guards rented the empty apartment across the hall. Sable would attend class the next day to create a public record of stability, and Gideon would prepare a legal challenge to the proxy meeting. After he left, I found Sable staring at the couch. "The spare room is still available," I said. "The documentary has not finished. There are 14 episodes. Then the penguins require commitment." I took the couch. She took the armchair, positioned 3 feet away. We established that neither of us wanted romance. My history with Nadia had made the entire concept feel like an expensive subscription with hidden charges. Sable had watched her father weaponize her mother's love and considered emotional dependence a security failure. "So we agree," I said. "No dating, no ambiguous flirting, no dramatic misunderstandings. A mutual non-romance treaty." "Exactly. With enforcement." "What kind of enforcement?" "If either party develops feelings, that party must purchase food for Chairman for 1 year." The fish floated past us, already profiting from our denial. I held out my hand. "Deal." Sable shook it. Her palm was cool, her grip firm. Neither of us noticed that we kept holding on after the agreement was complete. The following morning, my alarm rang at 6:30. I opened my eyes on the couch and discovered Sable asleep at the other end with her feet tucked beneath my blanket. At some point during the night, she had abandoned the armchair without waking me. At least she was not attached to my leg. Progress came in reasonable steps. We ate breakfast across from Chairman. Sable wore a charcoal suit Gideon had delivered. The change was startling. In my hoodie, she had looked like a sharp-tongued runaway. In tailored black, she became the woman whose photograph appeared beside words like succession, acquisition, and feared. She caught me staring. "Is something wrong?" "I just realized you could buy my entire building." I checked. "The owner will not sell." My spoon stopped halfway to my mouth. "You checked?" "The pipes make noise. That does not require purchasing the property. It is one possible solution. Please solve nothing before coffee." Gideon had arranged a dark sedan, but Sable refused it. She wanted to walk to campus with me because a convoy would contradict the goal of appearing normal. "You own part of the business school," I reminded her. I said normal, not convincing. Halfway there, she stopped beside a street vendor selling phone cases. Her encrypted device was secure but ugly, a thick black rectangle built for government emergencies. Sable studied a transparent case filled with floating silver stars. You want that one? I asked. No, she continued looking at it. I bought it for $6. This device is not the correct size, she said. Then use the case for something else. That is wasteful. Consider it a delayed birthday gift from somebody whose cake died before midnight. She accepted the case. A minute later, she had slipped Marisol's crescent cufflink inside it. Silver stars drifted around the moon whenever she moved. My mother took me camping once, she said as we walked. Cassian canceled the family trip because of a merger. She drove me out of the city herself. We counted satellites until sunrise. Did you find any aliens? No. Owen will be devastated. Her mouth curved. Do not tell him. He seems emotionally fragile. At the main gate, conversations thinned around us. Students recognized Sable immediately. She was not merely wealthy. Ardent Maritime paid for scholarships, research labs, and an entire glass wing overlooking the quad. Most people had only seen her at formal events surrounded by security. Now she was walking beside me, carrying a $6 phone case and complaining that I had chosen the long route. Owen saw us first. He stood beneath the engineering arch with a breakfast burrito in one hand. His mouth opened. The burrito fell. He caught it against his knee, lost his balance, and nearly entered a hedge. Caleb, he whispered when we reached him, why is Sable Ardent wearing your scarf? I looked at the blue scarf around her neck. I had given it to her without thinking because the morning was cold, because fabric blocks wind. Owen looked at Sable. Is he being threatened? Constantly, she replied. His face lit with religious certainty. I knew the storm was an origin event. Captain Meteor is fictional, I said. Owen placed a hand over his heart. Not where it matters. Sable leaned toward me. Your assessment of his intelligence was generous. Unfortunately, Bryn and Lacey emerged from the neighboring dorm at that exact moment. They noticed me, then Sable, then my scarf. Their expressions moved through confusion, disbelief, and a calculation of how quickly the information could reach Nadia. Bryn hurried over. Caleb, we need your database assignment. No greeting, no question about my bruised knee, straight to the service counter. The deadline is tonight, I said. Exactly. Send us your files and we'll change the formatting. That would be academic misconduct. Lacey rolled her eyes. You helped us last semester. I explained the material. I did not give you a finished submission. Nadia said you would handle it. Nadia does not manage my time. Bryn's voice rose. Are you seriously punishing our whole room because she missed one dinner? People nearby began listening. I felt the old instinct to avoid embarrassment, to comply now and resent myself later. Sable did not intervene. She simply watched me. That helped more than if she had threatened them. The tutoring center opens at noon, I said. I uploaded my study notes publicly last week. Use either resource. My completed work is not available. You've changed, Lacey snapped. I hope so. We walked away. Owen glanced over his shoulder. That was beautiful. Captain Meteor would salute you. If you compare me to him again, I will put Chairman in charge of your cactus. Who is Chairman? Sable answered without expression. A political refugee living in Caleb's bathroom. Owen stopped walking. I let him wonder. Sable had a meeting with the graduate dean. I headed toward the computer lab, but she caught the edge of my sleeve. You refused them without apologizing, she said. That is generally how refusal works. Yesterday, you apologized to Nadia for things she did. I am learning. Her fingers remained on my sleeve. Good. Then she released me and entered the business school with 2 discreet guards following at a distance. By lunch, photographs of us had spread across campus message boards. One showed Sable wearing my scarf. Another captured Owen bowing to her after learning she had saved Chairman. The most popular caption asked how an ordinary information systems student had become the private escort of the Ardent heir overnight. Nadia saw the photographs during a marketing seminar. Kira Moss, the quiet 4th member of her dorm, watched the color leave Nadia's face. Unlike Bryn and Lacey, Kira had never treated my help as an entitlement. She had warned Nadia more than once that my patience would eventually end. Is this real? Nadia asked. Kira looked at the image. It appears real. He doesn't know Sable Ardent. Apparently he does now. Nadia zoomed in until the pixels blurred. Sable was looking up at me with an expression the newspapers had never captured. cautious, amused, almost warm. "He is doing this to provoke me," Nadia said. Kira closed her notebook. "Sable Ardent does not strike me as someone who participates in jealousy performances for strangers." Bryn rushed into the room with the rejected assignment story. Instead of listening, Nadia opened my last message again. For the first time, the words did not look like a temporary tantrum. It looked like a door closing. She called Camden. Camden Rook was the son of a property developer and chairman of the Rook Foundation's Youth Council. He collected expensive watches, exclusive invitations, and people who made him appear important. Nadia had always insisted they were only networking, although she never discouraged the rumors surrounding them. He arrived on campus in a silver sports car before our afternoon lecture. Nadia chose a seat beside him in the front row. Bryn took photographs at angles designed to show his watch. Their plan was simple. If I saw Nadia with the man I had worried about for years, I would finally panic and beg for another chance. There were two problems. First, I skipped the lecture to help Sable prepare for Investigator Cross. Second, Owen attended and spent the entire hour searching online for an aquarium castle suitable for chairman. Camden's watch could have been on fire, and he would not have noticed. When the professor dismissed class, Nadia remained seated, staring at the door I had never entered. "He must be hiding," Bryn said. "He saw Camden's car outside." Kira packed her bag. "Or he has somewhere else to be." Camden laughed. "Let him hide. A guy like Mercer understands the difference between us." Kira looked at him for a long moment. "Do you?" Then she left. Investigator Leona Cross arrived at the bakery at 5, wearing flour on her coat and carrying a box of pastries. The disguise was so convincing that Mrs. Dallow tried to hire her. Upstairs, Cross checked every room for listening devices before opening Marisol's archive. She was a compact woman with patient eyes and the unsettling habit of noticing everything without moving her head. "The manifests prove financial crimes," she said. "They suggest contraband moved through the eastern port, but suggestion will not convict Cassian Ardent of murder. Digital files can be challenged unless we establish when and how Marisol collected them." Sable sat straight-backed at the table. Her voice identifies Cassian and Verena as suspects, not killers. "Then tell me what you need." Cross displayed a photograph from the accident report. Marisol's car had lost control on a mountain descent. Investigators found no mechanical failure, but the vehicle's remote diagnostic module disappeared before police impounded it. "A service ping was transmitted 11 minutes before the crash," Cross said. "The command came through a maintenance account belonging to North Star Fleet Systems. That company was dissolved a week later." Gideon leaned forward. "Rook Development used North Star for its corporate vehicles." "Exactly. Marisol's archive mentions the Rook Foundation, but does not prove whether Camden's father participated knowingly or his network was used without consent." Sable's eyes went cold. "Where is the diagnostic module?" "We believe Marisol removed the original weeks before her death because she suspected surveillance. The module found in the wreck may have been a replacement. Her assistant remembers her carrying a small black case into the university's Maritime Research Center, but the office was emptied after the funeral." I thought of the business school, the donor wing, and the photographs spreading across campus. "Ardent Maritime funded that center," I said. "Would Cassian have access?" "He ordered the office sealed," Cross replied. "The university claims all personal materials were returned to the family." "Returned to which member?" "Verena Locke signed the receipt." Sable stood. "Then we search the office tonight." Cross did not blink. "No, it was my mother's office. It is an active target controlled by the people we are investigating. We request a warrant. A request Cassian's attorneys will discover before the ink dries. If you break in, every item you touch becomes vulnerable in court. Your father wants you angry and reckless. Do not become his best defense." Sable's jaw tightened. I could almost see vengeance pulling her toward the door. "Your mother said to contact Investigator Cross," I reminded her. "She also trained me not to wait while an opponent destroys evidence." "Then help Cross build a legal reason to secure it immediately." Sable looked from me to the investigator. Cross nodded. "Your position as trust beneficiary may allow you to request an inventory. Gideon can file the demand tonight. I can assign surveillance while the order is reviewed." It was slower than breaking a lock, less satisfying than confronting her father, and far more likely to work. Sable hated it. She agreed anyway. That was the first moment I understood the difference between power and control. Power could force a door open. Control was choosing not to when every angry part of you wanted to. Cross copied the evidence using forensic equipment, signed each drive, and placed the original memory card in a sealed bag. Before leaving, she stopped beside Chairman's aquarium. "Is the carp part of security?" "He has senior oversight," Sable said. Cross considered that answer, then wrote something in her notebook. "Please do not put the fish in an official report," I said. "I make no promises." The legal inventory request forced the university to preserve Marisol's office. It also alerted Cassian that Sable had found allies. At 7 the next morning, Ardent Maritime released a statement claiming Sable had suffered a severe breakdown after her mother's death. It described Cassian as a devoted father seeking temporary authority to protect his daughter from opportunists. My name was not included, but a blurred photograph showed Sable entering my building. By 8, reporters crowded the bakery. Mrs. Dallow marched outside with a tray and sold them coffee at double price. I admired her ability to find capitalism inside any crisis. "We need to move," Gideon said. Sable stood by the window, reading the statement again. "If I disappear, he proves his story. If you remain, he may send someone less polite than reporters. Then I go to campus. I attend my scheduled seminar and speak to the dean. Publicly. Calmly." Gideon looked at me as if this was somehow my fault. "Do not involve me in that discussion," I said. She had opinions before meeting me. Sable chose a pale gray suit and tied her hair back. She looked composed enough to negotiate a merger, but I noticed her thumb rubbing the edge of the star-filled phone case. "Count the lights that stay," I said quietly. Her hand stilled. She counted the 4 pendant lamps above the table, the green power light on the router, and the blue glow from Chairman's filter. Her breathing evened. 6, she said. 7. You missed the toaster warning light. The toaster is not trustworthy. Still a light." She looked at me, and for one private second the glass princess disappeared. 7. Gideon's security team cleared a route through the reporters. Sable ignored every shouted question until one journalist asked whether I was being paid to hide her. She stopped. "Mr. Mercer refused compensation before he knew my surname," she said. "Any report suggesting otherwise is false." "What is your relationship?" another reporter shouted. Sable glanced back at me. Our non-romance treaty seemed to float between us like chairmen waiting for food. "He is my friend," she said. The word should have simplified everything. Instead, it landed somewhere beneath my ribs and stayed there. At Bellwether, the dean confirmed that Sable remained academically active and had requested no medical leave. Her seminar professor invited questions about a shipping finance case study, perhaps expecting the famous heiress to remain silent. Sable dismantled the case assumptions for 12 uninterrupted minutes and identified a hidden currency risk nobody else had noticed. By the end, the professor looked delighted and slightly frightened. The public narrative began changing before lunch. Videos of Sable speaking clearly competed with Cassian's claim that she could not manage her affairs. Unfortunately, Nadia chose that afternoon to stage her own confrontation. She waited in the central courtyard with Camden, Bryn, and Lacey. Kira stood several feet away, visibly wishing to be elsewhere. Owen and I left the engineering hall just as Sable crossed from the business school with Gideon behind her. Nadia stepped in front of me. "We need to talk without an audience." Half the courtyard was already filming. "Then this is a poor location," I said. "You ignored every call. What else was I supposed to do?" "Respect the message asking for distance." Camden gave a polished laugh. "Come on, Mercer. You made your point. Nadia feels bad. Stop dragging this out because a wealthy woman happened to borrow your scarf." He had not yet noticed Sable approaching behind him. Owen noticed. His entire body became still with the delighted anticipation of a man watching a meteor approach somebody else's house. Camden continued. "People like her do not date people like you. The sooner you accept that, the less humiliating this becomes." "This conversation is not about Sable," I said. "It is about Nadia and me ending an unhealthy pattern." Nadia's eyes flashed. "Then why did you parade her in front of everyone?" "I walked to class. Wearing this scarf I gave you." That surprised me. This scarf had been a Christmas gift selected by my mother and signed by Nadia with the rest of our friends. You did not give it to me, I said. That is not the point. It is exactly the point. You keep claiming ownership over things you barely participated in. Nadia flinched. Sable reached us. Gideon remained behind her, watching Camden with careful recognition. Caleb, Sable said, is this conversation voluntary? It is ending. Camden turned. All his confidence evaporated so quickly it was almost audible. Miss Ardent? Sable's gaze moved to the Rook Foundation pin on his lapel. Mr. Rook, your foundation's accounts are receiving significant attention today. I recommend spending less time evaluating who is socially permitted to walk beside me. His face tightened. I don't know what you mean. Then ask your father. Nadia looked between them. Sable, I'm sorry, but this is private. Caleb and I have known each other for 12 years. Length is not proof of care. Sable's voice was quiet, yet the courtyard seemed to lean toward it. Nadia lifted her chin. And you have known him for what, 2 days? Long enough to know he asks permission before offering help, keeps his promises when nobody is watching, and protects people without turning the protection into a debt. How long did you need? I felt heat climb my neck. Sable, I said gently, I can finish this. She looked at me, recognized the boundary, and stepped back. That mattered. She had the power to crush Nadia socially and chose not to take control from me. I faced the girl who had been the center of my emotional world for years. Nadia, I do not hate you. I don't want revenge, and I'm not asking you to regret choosing Camden's event. But our friendship depended on me giving and you deciding whether it was enough. I cannot continue that. Please stop contacting me outside necessary family matters. Tears gathered in her eyes. This time Bryn did not speak for her. Did you ever really love me? Nadia asked. Yes. That is why leaving took so long. I walked away with Owen. Sable fell into step beside us. Behind me, I heard Kira tell the crowd to stop recording and give Nadia space. Camden did not comfort her. He was already calling his father. Owen waited until we reached the next building before releasing the breath he had held. I have witnessed enlightenment, he announced. You witnessed a painful conversation. Sable appeared behind Camden precisely when his arrogance peaked. That is narrative justice. Captain Meteor could not have timed it better. Sable looked thoughtful. Can Captain Meteor access private banking servers? Owen blinked. Morally or technically? That was the wrong answer, Gideon said from behind us. Owen nearly left his body. That evening, Kira sent me a short message. She apologized for the way her roommates had treated me and promised she would not ask for assignments again. She also said Nadia was safe with her family and had deleted the courtyard recordings from her own account. I thanked her. I did not ask about Nadia's feelings. Compassion did not require reopening the door. At the apartment, Sable placed a year's supply of premium fish food beside Chairman's tank. I stared at the tower of containers. Why did you buy this? Operational planning. The treaty says the person who develops feelings buys the food. This is an advance inventory purchase. It proves nothing. You bought enough for a fish dynasty. Chairman pressed his mouth against the glass, refusing to testify. Before I could interrogate either of them, the lights went out. Unlike the earlier power failure, the bakery ovens below continued humming. Only our apartment was dark. Gideon's voice came through the hall. Stay away from the door. Glass shattered in the spare room. Sable pulled me behind the kitchen island as a small metal cylinder rolled across the floor, releasing thick white smoke. My eyes burned. Gideon's guards shouted from the hall. Somebody struck the back door hard enough to split the frame. I crawled toward Chairman's tank, found the emergency light beside it, and switched it on. A masked figure climbed through the broken spare room window using the bakery awning below. Sable moved before I could stop her. She kicked the attacker's wrist, sending a stun baton across the floor, then drove her shoulder into his chest. He grabbed her hair and pulled. I seized the only object within reach, Owen's reinforced Captain Meteor umbrella. The umbrella was designed for convention costumes and contained an aluminum shaft far stronger than necessary. I jammed it between the attacker's ankles and twisted. He fell. Sable pinned his arm while Gideon burst through the doorway. The second attacker fled down the fire escape. Guards caught him in the alley. The entire fight lasted less than 20 seconds. My heart continued trying to escape for 10 minutes. Police found forged utility identification, restraints, and a syringe containing a sedative. The plan had not been murder. They intended to abduct Sable and make her disappearance support Cassian's story. One attacker carried a North Star Fleet Systems access card. Cross arrived and took custody of the evidence. The men refused to speak, but the card linked the operation to the same dissolved company that had accessed Marisol's car. "This is enough for warrants," Cross said. "Not enough to arrest Cassian yet, but the wall is moving." Sable stood amid broken glass, staring at a cut on my forehead. "You are injured." "It is small. You could have been taken. So could you. This happened because I stayed here." The familiar darkness entered her expression. I caught it before it could turn into a plan. "No. It happened because criminals made a choice. Do not steal responsibility from them. Your building is damaged. Mrs. Dallo was downstairs." And she hit the second attacker with a bread paddle before the guards caught him. She is currently telling the police she deserves a civic medal. Sable did not smile. "You need to leave me," she said. "That is not your decision. I am releasing you from this. I never signed a contract. Caleb, listen carefully. I will follow security instructions. I will not chase armed men, enter private warehouses, or pretend I am invincible. But you do not get to protect me by disappearing and deciding what I can survive. That is the same control you hate from your father." The words landed hard. Gideon looked at me with something close to approval. Sable's eyes shone. "Then what am I supposed to do with the fact that you matter?" Silence filled the ruined room. Owen's umbrella chose that moment to spring open on the floor. Captain Meteor's smiling face appeared beneath the slogan, "Courage is a team sport." I looked at it, then at Sable. "Apparently we work as a team." A broken laugh escaped her. She covered her mouth, half crying and half furious at the umbrella for existing. "I hate your friend's merchandise." Everyone does. We moved to a secure guest house owned by Marisol's former attorney, Petra Sol. Chairman traveled in a sealed transport tank on Sable's lap. She refused to trust him to the guards. Owen arrived at midnight, carrying clothes, laptops, his cactus, and an aquarium castle shaped like a fortress. "The cactus was not invited," I said. "Neither were you," Gideon replied. Owen set the plant beside Chairman's tank. "They have bonded." The fish and cactus displayed no visible awareness of each other. Sable examined the bright plastic castle. "This is architecturally offensive." Chairman immediately swam inside it. "He has no standards," she muttered. The guest house had 6 bedrooms, security glass, and a panic room. Sable still chose the bedroom across from mine. At 2 in the morning, I heard her door open. She stood in the hall holding the star case, unable to speak. I switched on the lights one by one. "Count them," I said. 8. Again. 8. "Which ones stay?" "All of them." "So do we." She sat on the floor with her back against the wall. I sat opposite her. She told me about the crash for the first time. Marisol had called 10 minutes before it happened. Sable ignored the call because they had argued about security. Her mother left no voicemail. "If I answered, she might have stopped the car," Sable said. "Or the call might have distracted her. Or she might have said goodbye. Or nothing would have changed. Grief gives us imaginary control because helplessness feels worse." "You sound like the counselor." "She sent me reading material." "You read it?" "All 22 pages." Sable looked down. "Why?" "Because I'm here." She remembered those words from the terminal. I saw recognition move across her face. This time, she reached first. Her arms went around me carefully, as if asking a question. I returned the hug. There was nothing accidental or sleeping about it. She trembled against my shoulder until the tension finally left her body. "The treaty," she whispered. "This is emergency diplomatic contact. Chairman will demand documentation. Chairman cannot read." That is a dangerous assumption about senior leadership. We stayed in the hallway until sunrise. Cross's warrants produced a breakthrough the next day. North Star's archived server logs showed a remote command sent to Marisol's vehicle from an address inside the Ardent estate. The user credentials belonged to Verena. Verena claimed they had been stolen. The university inventory uncovered Marisol's empty black case, but not the original diagnostic module. Security footage from 6 weeks earlier showed Camden entering the research center after midnight with his father's access badge. Camden denied taking anything. His father hired attorneys and blamed an unnamed employee. Then Camden called Nadia. He demanded she convince me to arrange a private meeting with Sable. In exchange, he promised to restore the internship introduction she believed she had earned at the lounge. That was the moment Nadia finally understood what she had chosen on my birthday. She had not selected ambition over affection. She had selected a man who viewed every relationship as leverage. Instead of contacting me, she recorded the call and sent it to investigator Cross through the public tip line. It did not erase the past. It was still the right thing to do. Cross traced Camden's next call to a storage facility owned by the Rook Foundation. A warrant uncovered Marisol's diagnostic module, financial ledgers, and 3 crates of undeclared weapons scheduled for transport through the eastern port. Camden was arrested for evidence tampering and conspiracy. His father disappeared before police reached his office. For the first time, Cassian's empire looked breakable. He responded by moving the board meeting forward. At noon the following day, every Ardent director received notice of an emergency session at the company's waterfront tower. Cassian planned to present psychiatric testimony declaring Sable incapable, vote himself temporary trustee, and sign the Eastern Port sale before the courts could freeze it. The testimony came from a doctor Sable had never met. Petra Sol filed an injunction. The hearing would not occur until the next morning. The board meeting began at 8 that night. "He only needs 6 hours," Sable said, reading the notice. "Once the subsidiary transfers to the consortium, the records and personnel scatter across 3 jurisdictions." "Cross can raid the tower," I said. "The warrants cover North Star and Rook properties, not Ardent headquarters. Cassian's attorneys will delay expansion." Gideon looked grim. "There is another option. Sable can attend. As a director and beneficiary, she can challenge the vote, demand verification, and delay execution." "You want to put her inside a building controlled by the man who ordered her kidnapping?" I asked. "I want to give her the choice her position provides." Sable was already standing. "I am going." Every protective instinct in me objected. I forced myself to ask a different question. "What is the security plan?" Gideon answered immediately. 2 teams inside, Cross's officers outside, body cameras on every member, and a helicopter route if the elevators were disabled. Sable would carry a panic transmitter and remain in public board areas. "And me?" "You remain here," Gideon said. Sable looked at me. Fear and determination existed together in her eyes. "He is right," she said. "This is my board, my father, and my mother's fight. Your mother told you not to face them alone. I will have Gideon, Petra, and half a security company. Then you will not be alone." She seemed surprised by my agreement. "Did you expect me to hide in your car?" I asked. "Possibly. I promised not to chase conspiracies into private buildings. Also, your guards would find me in 7 seconds. 3, Gideon said. I ignored him. "Go, delay the vote, come back." Sable stepped closer. "That sounds like an order. It is a request. Then ask properly." I took her hand. "Come back to me." Her composure nearly failed. She squeezed my fingers once, hard. "I will." Ardent Tower rose from the waterfront like a blade of black glass. Sable entered through the main lobby at 7:45 with Gideon on her right and Petra Sol on her left. Cameras recorded her walking without assistance, answering reporters clearly, and presenting her director credentials to security. Cassian had wanted a frightened daughter dragged home by family employees. Instead, the world saw the future head of Ardent Maritime arriving to challenge him. The boardroom occupied the top floor. A wall of windows looked over the same river where Sable had nearly ended her life. Cassian sat at the head of a table long enough to separate him from ordinary consequences. Verena stood behind his chair with a folder of medical documents. Sable took her mother's former seat. For the first time since the funeral, father and daughter faced each other. Cassian was handsome in the polished, distant way of a statue outside a bank. He opened his arms, as if expecting an embrace. "Sable, thank God you are safe. Do not involve God in your public relations strategy." Several directors lowered their eyes to hide reactions. Cassian let his arms fall. "You see? Hostility, paranoia, reckless behavior. Exactly what grief has done to my child." "Your child is a director of this company," Petra said. "Address her accordingly." Verena distributed the doctor's report. Sable read the first page and almost laughed. It claimed she suffered delusions involving corporate sabotage and believed her father responsible for an imaginary conspiracy. The doctor evaluated me through newspaper articles, she said.
He reviewed accounts of your dangerous incident. Cassian replied softly. I am trying to protect you from people exploiting your condition. Would those people include Caleb Mercer? A poor student who placed himself beside a vulnerable billionaire? Obviously. Sable's hand tightened under the table. He refused your money, Gideon said. Cassian did not look at him. Loyalty has made you sentimental, Shaw. Do not mistake a longer plan for virtue. Sable touched the panic transmitter at her wrist. She remembered Caleb asking about security instead of ordering her to stay. Cassian called control protection. Caleb had given her a choice, even when he was afraid. The contrast cleared her mind. Before any vote, she said, I demand disclosure of the Eastern Port buyer, all beneficial owners, and every payment made to North Star Fleet Systems. Verena answered. Those matters fall outside tonight's competency review. They are the only reason for tonight's review.
Cassian folded his hands. You have been poisoned against your family. Sign the proxy, come home, and receive treatment. I will forgive the spectacle. Forgive me? You embarrassed your mother's memory. That was his mistake. Sable had spent 6 weeks carrying guilt like a chain. On the pier, she had believed dying would end the questions surrounding Marisol's death and remove the obstacle Cassian clearly considered her to be. Now she heard him use her mother as a weapon and finally understood that shame had never belonged to her. My mother left evidence, Sable said. The smallest change passed over Verena's face. Cassian remained still. Grief produces fantasies. Investigators found North Star's access card on the men who tried to abduct me. An unfortunate event arranged by your new friends, perhaps. Gideon took one step forward. Cassian's security chief mirrored him near the door. Petra activated a tablet.
This meeting is being preserved for the injunction hearing. Continue carefully. Cassian smiled. Of course. Transparency protects everyone.
At the guest house, Owen and I watched a silent security feed from Gideon's team. We had no audio from inside the boardroom, only hallway cameras and status lights from the body cameras. Chairman circled his castle. The cactus stood beside the aquarium, contributing nothing. I tried to study Marisol's copied archive because staring at the feed made me want to break my promise and drive to the tower. Cross had asked me to document how we derived the password. Every step needed to be repeatable in court. The original number sequence bothered me. After we converted count the lights that stay, 32 digits remained unused. We had assumed they were padding meant to confuse anyone attempting decryption. Marisol did not strike me as someone who wasted 32 digits. I replayed the music box recording. The first phrase followed the melody exactly. The remaining digits referenced notes that did not exist in the main tune, but several matched the faint metallic sounds between rotations. Owen, listen. He removed one earbud. Is the boardroom exploding? Not yet. What do you hear behind the melody? He listened twice. A winding mechanism. Maybe a gear with damaged teeth? Mechanical engineering finally justified the tuition. We isolated the clicks and mapped their intervals. The leftover numbers became letters when grouped by the gear rotation. They produced a second phrase. The first light lies. The archive contained a folder labeled Lighthouse_Acquisition. It held ordinary contracts for a navigation company. I had opened it earlier and dismissed it. Now I checked the file headers instead of the contents. One contract had 2 beginnings. The visible document was a decoy layered over a hidden encrypted volume. The new phrase unlocked it. A video appeared. The timestamp was 3 days before Marisol's crash. She sat in her university office, facing a hidden camera. This is a contingency record, she said. I met Cassian and Verena at 9:10 tonight. They demanded I approve the North Star transfer. I refused. Cassian said the eastern route would open with or without me. Verena reminded him that my vehicle still used the family diagnostic network. I believe they intend to disable my car remotely and make my death appear accidental. She held documents toward the camera, one by one, so every signature could be seen. The original diagnostic module is hidden beneath the West Beacon lens in Bellwether's Maritime Laboratory. Investigator Cross can verify its serial number. Sable, if I fail to stop them, do not inherit my revenge. Inherit my unfinished work. The video ended. Owen and I stared at the screen. Call Cross, he said. I already was. The West Beacon lens stood inside a teaching display in the preserved laboratory. Cross's officers found the module within 12 minutes. Its memory showed repeated unauthorized commands from Verina's credentials, and a failed break disengagement test performed the week before Marisol died. Cross took the new evidence to a judge. The murder warrants were approved at 8:38. At 8:39, every status light from inside Ardent Tower turned red. The hallway feeds went black. Gideon's voice cut through the radio. "Internal security has jammed communications. Lock the guest house. This may be coordinated." Then we lost him. Inside the boardroom, Cassian's security chief had sealed the doors. 2 directors loyal to Sable protested. Verina ordered everyone to remain seated because of a credible external threat. Sable understood immediately. Cassian had received a warning that warrants were coming. "You are detaining the board," Petra said. "We are protecting it," Verina replied. Gideon tried the service radio. Static answered. His 2 inside guards had been isolated on a lower floor. Cassian placed the proxy document in front of Sable. "Sign. The vote has not occurred. There will be no vote. We no longer have time for theater." Several directors stood. The security chief displayed a handgun beneath his jacket. They sat again. Cassian's public mask disappeared. "You have made this unnecessarily difficult," he told Sable. "Your mother made the same mistake. She confused moral vanity with business." Petra's body camera was still recording locally, even though it could not transmit. Sable needed him to continue. "Did moral vanity cut her brake connection?" she asked. Verina's eyes narrowed. Cassian smiled without warmth. "Marisol was warned. She chose a mountain road. You killed your wife because she blocked a port sale. I preserved a structure built over 4 generations. She would have dismantled it for strangers who will never know her name. And you tried to abduct your daughter." "I tried to bring home a hysterical girl before a nobody filled her head with heroic fantasies." Sable thought of Caleb's ruined birthday cake, the burned toast, the ridiculous fish, and 7 lights glowing in a small kitchen. Cassian believed ordinary life was nothing. To her, it had become proof that a future existed outside his control. "Caleb did not fill my head," she said. "He gave me enough silence to hear my own mind again." Cassian shoved a pen toward her. "Sign, and he remains an amusing footnote. Refuse, and the men outside his guest house receive a different instruction." Fear struck exactly where he intended. Sable looked at Gideon. He gave no visible signal, but she knew his training. A threat delivered that specifically was probably being monitored by a second team. Cassian wanted panic to erase her judgment. She picked up the pen. Verina relaxed. Sable drew a line through the signature block and wrote, "Under duress," across every page. "You should have learned something from my mother," she said. "Threatening someone I love does not make me weaker. It tells me where to aim." Cassian struck her. The blow turned her face. Gideon crossed the room before the security chief fully drew his weapon. He trapped the man's wrist against the table. Petra pulled Sable behind a chair. Directors scattered as the gun fired into the ceiling. Gideon drove the chief to the floor, but 2 more guards entered from a side door. At the guest house, an SUV crashed through the outer gate. Cross had anticipated retaliation. Her tactical team waited inside the darkened garage, while Owen and I sheltered in the panic room with Chairman's travel tank. The intruders reached the foyer and were arrested before finding the stairs. I barely noticed. My attention stayed on the dead radio. "There has to be another way into the tower network," I said. Owen examined the building schematic Gideon had left. "Jamming blocks cellular and standard radio. Emergency fire controls should use a shielded wired loop. Can it transmit outside? Alarm status goes to the municipal system. Ardent Tower's fire panel used software maintained by Bellwether's engineering partnership. Students in my security class had tested a training copy the previous semester. I could not access the live system, nor should I. But Cross's incident commander could request emergency control through the fire department. I explained the route. Fire Command activated the evacuation circuit. Sirens erupted throughout Ardent Tower. Magnetic locks released automatically. Smoke control fans disrupted the local jammer. For 6 precious seconds, Gideon's body camera reconnected. Cross heard Cassian ordering the guards to move Sable to the helipad. That gave officers both a location and an immediate hostage emergency. The tactical team entered. Sable, Petra, and Gideon retreated through the newly released boardroom door. The security chief lay unconscious behind them, but the other guards closed from the elevator lobby. Gideon pushed the women toward the emergency stairs. "Down!" he ordered. "The police are coming up," Petra said. "Cassian's men control the middle floors. We go to the roof and hold the access point." They climbed. Sable's cheek throbbed. Her lungs burned by the 48th floor. Yet with every landing, her panic receded. She was not fleeing toward an edge this time. She was moving toward survival. Cassian and Verena reached the roof from a private elevator. A helicopter waited with its rotors turning. Cassian's remaining guards dragged Gideon away from the access door and forced Sable forward. The river glittered below. From that height, the ferry terminal was only a dark shape near the water. Verena held the gun now. "Get in," she said. Petra had been separated on the stairs. Gideon knelt with blood running from his temple. Sable stood alone between the helicopter and the roof edge. Cassian opened the cabin door. "You can still choose family. You killed mine. I am your family. You are a biological fact." The fire alarm stopped. In the sudden quiet, Sable heard sirens below and rotor blades above. Verena pressed the weapon against Gideon's head. "The helicopter, now!" Sable moved toward it. Her panic transmitter had been torn away in the boardroom, but Marisol's cufflink remained inside the transparent phone case in her pocket. The encrypted phone had regained a weak connection when the jammer failed. She slid her hand into her pocket and pressed the emergency call shortcut without removing it. Caleb answered at the guest house. He heard wind, rotors, and Verena's voice. "Sable?" She could not respond. Any change in expression might expose the call. "If you hear me, count the lights," he said. Across the roof, navigation lamps marked the helicopter pad. 4 white, 2 red, 1 green beside the access door. 7. The green light changed as the door lock released from inside. 8. Sable dropped flat. The roof door burst open. Cross's tactical officers emerged behind shields. Verena fired once, missing Gideon as he threw himself sideways. Officers returned a controlled shot that struck her shoulder. The gun spun across the concrete. Cassian lunged into the helicopter. The pilot raised both hands and refused to lift. He had heard enough through the open radio and wanted no part of escape. Cassian dragged him from the seat and reached for the controls himself. Sable rose directly in front of the cabin. "Move!" he shouted. For one dangerous second, father and daughter stared at each other through the open door. Cassian still believed fear would make her obey. It always had when she was a child. Sable did not move. Officers pulled him backward before the rotors gained speed. He fought, cursed Marisol, cursed Sable, and promised every director would beg for his return. Handcuffs closed around his wrists. Verena was treated by medics and arrested. Gideon remained conscious. Petra emerged onto the roof, holding the body camera that contained Cassian's confession. Cross approached Sable slowly. "Are you injured?" "No." "Your cheek is swelling." Then one part of that answer may be inaccurate. Her composure lasted until the phone in her pocket spoke. "Sable, say something." Caleb's voice broke through the wind. She pulled out the phone. Silver stars swirled around Marisol's cufflink. 8, she said. "What?" "There were 8 lights. They stayed." Her knees gave way. Gideon caught her before she hit the roof. At the guest house, I sat on the panic room floor with the phone against my ear, listening to Sable cry for the first time without trying to hide it.
I wanted to reach through the call. Instead, I stayed present until medics took over. Cross did not let me go to the tower until the arrests were complete. That was reasonable. I disliked every second of it. Sable returned shortly after midnight. A bruise darkened one side of her face, and dried blood marked the cuff of her suit. None of it was hers, according to Gideon. She crossed the guest house foyer without acknowledging the officers, lawyers, or reporters outside. I met her halfway. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. "You came back," I said. "I said I would." Then she walked into my arms. The hug was not careful this time. She held me as if the entire night had been a current trying to pull her away. I buried my face in her hair and felt something inside me finally unclench. Owen quietly guided everyone else out of the foyer. Even he understood that Captain Meteor commentary could wait.
When Sable pulled back, she touched the bandage on my forehead from the apartment attack.
"Did the men reach you?"
They reached several police officers who were expecting them.
"You stayed in the panic room?"
The whole time.
You did not attempt anything heroic and idiotic? I provided technical information from behind a reinforced door. It was moderately heroic and responsibly boring. Her eyes closed with relief. Good. I looked at the bruise on her cheek. Anger rose so fast I tasted metal. Did Cassian do that? Yes. I may revise my position on responsible boredom. Sable almost smiled. Cross says he will not receive bail. Then I can remain boring. We sat beside Chairman's tank while dawn approached. Sable told me everything that had happened in the boardroom and on the roof. When she reached the moment Cassian threatened me, her voice stopped. I thought signing might keep you alive, she said. But you did not sign.
Because I realized he would use you forever. Today it would be a proxy. Tomorrow it would be a port. Eventually, I would become him and call it protection. You chose differently because you showed me differently. The distance between us felt suddenly fragile. Chairman swam through the plastic fortress and bumped a decorative tower loose. It floated upward. Sable watched him. The non-romance treaty is becoming administratively difficult. We could renegotiate. There are penalties. You already purchased the fish food. An advance inventory. Of course. She turned toward me. Caleb, I do not know how to do this normally. Neither do I. I investigated your building before agreeing to stay. I memorized your class schedule for security. I almost bought the bakery because the plumbing annoyed me. My understanding of normal courtship may be compromised. You also rescued a carp and put warning labels on dangerous appliances. We can build from there.
That is a terrible foundation. It is ours.
I lifted my hand, giving her time to move away. She placed her palm against mine. I have feelings for you, she said with the expression of someone announcing a hostile takeover. I have feelings for you too. When did this happen? Somewhere between the toaster fire and the corporate siege? That is an imprecise timeline. Romance appears poorly regulated. Her thumb brushed my knuckles. What happens now? Now I ask if I can kiss you. All her practiced confidence disappeared. A faint flush rose beneath the bruise. You are asking? Yes. Sable looked at my mouth, then back at my eyes. Permission granted. The first kiss was gentle, brief, and entirely real. There were no cameras, no expensive setting, and no audience except a fish with terrible architectural taste. When we separated, Sable remained close. Again, she said. That sounded like an order. It is a request. Then ask properly.
She caught the front of my shirt and kissed me before I finished smiling. Cassian Ardent, Verena Locke, and the Rook conspirators were charged over the following months. The diagnostic evidence, Marisol's recording, financial ledgers, kidnapping attempt, and boardroom confession supported cases for murder, trafficking, conspiracy, and obstruction. Camden accepted a plea agreement for his role in removing the module and identified the warehouse where his father had hidden. The elder Rook was arrested at a private airfield. No single dramatic recording solved everything. Investigators built the case document by document, witness by witness. That mattered to Sable. Her mother's death did not become entertainment or family mythology. It became evidence tested in court. The board suspended Cassian immediately. On Sable's 22nd birthday, Marisol's trust transferred its voting shares to her without challenge. Sable became chair of Ardent Maritime, but she rejected the title her father had treated like a crown. Her first resolutions created an independent ethics office, closed every unverified route, compensated workers threatened into silence, and transferred internal records to investigators. Profits fell for 2 quarters. Sable called that the price of discovering which profits should never have existed. Gideon became head of corporate protection under a charter forbidding surveillance of family members without consent. Petra joined the board. Cross remained an investigator and refused 3 recruitment offers from Sable. You cannot hire every competent person you meet, I told her. That sounds like an inefficient rule. You tried to hire my dentist. He noticed a fracture your previous dentist missed. He does not want to run maritime compliance. People lack ambition. Sable continued therapy. Some nights were still difficult. The criminal case forced her to hear details no daughter should have to know. She no longer treated panic as weakness or asked permission to grieve. When the darkness returned, she called someone, counted what remained, and waited for the wave to pass. I did not become her cure. That was never a job one person could perform. I became her partner
while she built a life containing doctors, friends, work, boundaries, and reasons of her own. I kept attending Bellwether. Sable offered to pay my tuition once. I refused. She then funded a blind scholarship for every student in my program, which was technically not the same thing and extremely typical of her approach to compromise. Owen discovered the scholarship and became convinced Captain Meteor had influenced corporate policy. Courage is a team sport, he reminded us during dinner. Your umbrella did help, Sable admitted. Owen froze with a taco halfway to his mouth. Validation from Sable affected him more powerfully than any academic award. I knew it, he whispered. The captain provides. Chairman grew large, demanding, and completely useless. Sable installed a custom aquarium in her executive office so he could attend board meetings. Directors learned not to ask why a carp occupied the wall behind the chairwoman. Moving back above the bakery created its own negotiation. Sable arrived with 12 security specialists, 2 interior designers, and a contractor who wanted to replace every door. Mrs. Dallow blocked the staircase with a flower-covered rolling pin and announced that nobody was turning her building into a military bunker. Sable and Mrs. Dallow argued for 40 minutes. They eventually agreed on reinforced locks, discrete window sensors, and no armed guard inside the bakery during business hours. Gideon called the result unacceptable. Sable called it community diplomacy. Mrs. Dallow celebrated by making him carry 6 sacks of flour. Our first official date happened in the apartment because leaving required 3 route inspections and a decoy vehicle. I cooked pepper soup. Sable attempted grilled sandwiches under supervision. She watched the toaster with the focused hostility of a commander facing an old enemy. No metal, I reminded her. I remember its tactics. The bread emerged evenly browned. Sable looked more pleased than she had after winning her first shareholder vote. I defeated it, she said. You pressed one lever. Leadership is knowing which lever to press. We ate on the floor because the new security team had not finished checking the dining chairs. Chairman occupied his original tank near the window. The expensive office aquarium remained available, but Sable brought him home on weekends because she believed senior executives needed work-life balance. After dinner, she opened her laptop by habit. 73 messages waited. I did not tell her to ignore them. I asked whether she wanted the evening to continue. Sable looked at the screen, closed it, and placed it in a drawer. Yes, that choice seemed ordinary. For her, it was revolutionary. Cassian had taught her that rest invited betrayal, and affection created vulnerabilities. Marisol had tried to teach her otherwise, but grief had buried the lesson. Now Sable practiced leaving work unfinished for one evening and discovering that the company still existed in the morning. We watched the Penguin documentary from the beginning. Halfway through the second episode, she moved closer and rested her head on my shoulder while fully awake. This is deliberate, she informed me. Thank you for clarifying. I do not want another allegation that I confused you with emergency furniture. The evidence from that morning remains compelling. She stole the blanket in retaliation. I recovered half of it through diplomatic talks. By midnight, both of us had fallen asleep on the couch. The noisy pipes were knocking inside the wall, and cinnamon from the bakery ovens had filled the room. For the first time, Sable woke without needing to check whether the door was locked. She listened to my breathing, the aquarium filter, and Mrs. Dallow starting work downstairs. Safety was not silence, she realized. Sometimes it was knowing every familiar sound and trusting what would happen next. Nadia and I did not become friends again. 3 months after the arrests, she asked to meet at a public cafe. I agreed because her message contained no demand, excuse, or accusation. She apologized for treating my time as property and my affection as something guaranteed. She admitted that missing the birthday had not been a misunderstanding. She had wanted Camden's attention and expected me to wait because I always had. I kept telling myself your boundary was cruelty, she said. It was easier than admitting I had hurt someone who cared about me. I accepted the apology. Acceptance did not restore access. We wished each other well and left separately. Nadia later moved out of the dorm she shared with Bryn and Lacey. Kira helped her apply for an internship based on her own work. From a distance, it seemed she was learning too. The following spring, the old ferry terminal reopened as a public waterfront garden. Sable funded a permanent crisis response station, but she refused to put the Ardent name on the building. Instead, a small plaque thanked the emergency workers who answered calls on stormy nights. Mr. Pritchard did not receive a plaque because he remained imaginary. The security guard who actually helped pull Sable back received free bakery pastries for life. Mrs. Dallow considered this a more meaningful civic honor than a medal. On the anniversary of our meeting, Sable and I walked to the renovated pier after sunset.
The rail had been replaced with thick glass. Warm lights ran along the path. People ate from food carts, children chased reflections, and musicians played near the water. The place no longer looked like the end of anything. Sable rested her arms against the safe side of the barrier. "I hated you that night," she said. "You did not know me. I hated you efficiently. You tried to make coffee from cactus soil the next morning. Your judgment was unreliable. The jars were similar. One had a cactus printed on it. Decorative branding." I handed her a small box. She examined it with suspicion. "Is this an anniversary gift?" "Open it." Inside was a silver key attached to a tiny fish charm. Sable's eyes narrowed. "What does it unlock?" "The apartment above the bakery. I renewed the lease with both our names, only if you want it. Your estate is safer, and the guest house is larger, but Chairman's original tank left a permanent rectangle on the wall." For all her command of billion-dollar negotiations, Sable could not answer. "This is not a proposal," I added quickly. "It is a key. We can discuss everything else at a pace that does not alarm your security team. Gideon will be alarmed by any pace." "True." She closed her fingers around the key. "I want it." "The apartment?" "The apartment, the noisy pipes, the bakery smell, breakfast arguments, you, all of it." "Chairman, too?" "He is part of senior leadership." I laughed. She stepped closer and placed my hand against her cheek. "There is one problem," she said. "What?" "Your birthday was ruined because of me." "My birthday was ruined before you arrived." "Then I will replace the memory." She led me toward a small pavilion at the center of the garden. Owen, Gideon, Petra, Cross, Mrs. Dallow, Kira, and my parents waited beneath strings of warm lights. A new cake sat on the table. The frosting read, "Happy birthday, Caleb." Beneath it, in smaller letters, the baker had added, "Please keep all guests inside the railing." Owen wore his silver Captain Meteor cape. Gideon pretended not to know him. Chairman attended through a live video feed displayed on a tablet. "You organized this?" I asked Sable. "With professional supervision. No rooftop lounge, no strategic networking, and no party games involving expensive watches." "That sounds perfect." She looked nervous, despite everything she had survived. "Caleb, before we go in, I need to amend something I said the first night." "Which part?" "I said people always want something." The lights reflected in her eyes. She no longer looked through them toward the river. "I still think it is true," she continued. "But wanting is not always taking. Sometimes it is asking, listening, and accepting the answer. What do you want?" "A life that belongs to me. Work my mother would recognize. A home that does not feel like a guarded museum." She squeezed the key in her palm. "And as many ordinary mornings with you as we can make." I kissed her forehead. "My answer is yes." I did not formally ask a yes or no question. I am managing risk. Poorly. Consistently. Sable smiled, not the careful expression used for cameras or directors, but the bright, surprised smile she had once believed died with her mother. We joined our friends beneath the lights. Owen immediately began a speech comparing our relationship to Captain Meteor's most famous rescue. Sable allowed him 30 seconds before threatening to transfer him to a weather station in the Arctic. Mrs. Dallow cut the cake. Gideon checked every exit twice, then accepted a second slice. Cross refused to discuss the investigation and somehow won every card game. Later, when the candles had burned low, Sable leaned against my shoulder and looked across the garden. 1 year earlier, both of us had arrived at the waterfront believing something important had ended. I thought I had lost the person I built my future around. Sable thought she had lost every reason to build a future at all. We had been wrong in different ways. Nadia was not the reward waiting at the end of my devotion. Sable was not a broken heiress waiting for a man to repair her. Love was not rescue, ownership, sacrifice without limits, or fear renamed as protection. It was choice repeated after the emergency ended. It was Sable attending therapy when nobody forced her.
It was me keeping my own education and friendships instead of dissolving into her world. It was both of us asking before touching a wound. It was arguing about salt, caring for an inconvenient fish, and understanding that a boundary did not mean abandonment. Sable took my hand. "How many lights?" she asked. I counted the lamps along the pier, the pavilion bulbs behind us, and the steady beacon above the crisis station. "Too many." "That is not an answer." "Enough." She considered it, then nodded. The river kept moving below us, indifferent to companies, inheritances, and all the names powerful people carved into stone. That once would have frightened Sable. Now she found comfort in it. No empire could order the water to return upstream, and no terrible night could demand that the rest of our lives remain trapped inside it. Tomorrow would bring court hearings, lectures, security briefings, and another argument about whether chairman needed a second castle. None of those things sounded grand enough for a legend. They sounded better. They sounded like a life. Enough lights stayed. So did we.